Hey, folks, welcome to InTheMoneyStocks.com's daily analysis video, brought to you by the creators of proprietary price, pattern, and time methodology. Learn the PPT strategies and profit for life. My name is Gareth Soloway, Chief Market Strategist here at InTheMoneyStocks.com. Into the action we go today, folks, on this Monday, March 21st, 2022. Markets basically having a flattish type day. S&P closed flat to slightly positive. QQQ NASDAQ 100 had a little bit of a pullback today, down fractionally about 0.25% or so. So again, a little bit of what I would refer to as a pause day. Markets obviously having major upside last week. I again surmised or thought it was a possibility that some of that crazy upside was due to Options X. What we'll watch this week is, do we see us starting to trade back down? And if it does, if the markets do trade back down, then that basically would confirm that it was kind of an Options X shady move to grab the markets to the upside so that the institutions did not have to pay out massive profits to investors on options expiration Friday. As of now, we don't know for sure, right? And obviously, in all fairness, I'm sure there's many moving parts to the market. Obviously, some of the upside would then have triggered a short squeeze, which was just a natural occurrence of shorts getting squeezed, and other scenarios. For us, it was an amazingly profitable week last week. We got right back on the horse today by buying SCO. So again, adding back my SCO position, starting small, just like I always do, folks. You guys know how I roll at this point. So just 1.5% of the portfolio at 563, closed around 540. So again, if we get down to about 520 tomorrow, you will likely see another entry of SCO right there, just slowly accumulating a short oil play. We'll go over the chart on oil, but basically right around that 110 level on spot crude is where I was looking. And again, we actually got up as high per the close on crude of about 112 and change. Next level, again, would be right around 115 or so in terms of resistance on spot crude. All right, I also shorted Tesla today. So again, we talked about this last week. I talked about it in the Verified Live broadcast in the overnight or last night. And again, this had a big move up early. Very nice short so far. If we go to a daily chart, which I'll show you in a little bit, it was right into some major resistance up here. And again, to me, that was a no-brainer to pull the trigger on that position and get short on Tesla. Lastly, Alcoa, another crazy mover. In fact, I can flip over to the daily chart here. Take a look at this beautiful little double top right up here. And again, classic double top, extended move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight up days into double top. We should see a pullback. Just in the near term, I would think that this gap would get filled, which is around $82.50. Eventually, this gap down here. And eventually, in all fairness, we probably break this line to the downside and head back to here. But right now, with commodity prices soaring, everyone wants to be an Alcoa, which is an aluminum player there. And again, that is continuing to stay high. Although, again, as I've said, I do expect it to come in pretty hard in the not-too-distant future. All right, so again, if we look across the board on the market, you had some stocks that eked out small gains, but also you had stocks that were down. Some of the Chinese stocks after the crazy moves last week did pull back, but just minor pullbacks. Again, when you see Alibaba down about 4% on the day after rallying about 50%, that's about as small of a downtick as you can get. And again, I think you likely see more downside. I have major support on Alibaba around $85, which in all fairness is almost $20 lower than current levels. So again, it does tell us that we could see another wave down. I just don't think the Chinese stocks like Alibaba take out their recent lows, which is around $70 and change. All right. Let's quickly go to the daily chart here. And again, we covered the new positions today. There was really nothing that I wanted to take off in terms of profits. But again, we'll continue to watch those open positions and see. But if we flip over to the daily chart on the S&P 500, you can see that basically we closed with somewhat of a doji. Now, it's important to recognize that this pattern generally can be referred to as somewhat of a topping pattern. So basically what you're getting here is after a big 4-day move up, you get a pause day. Now, pause days can work in the way of consolidation, but initially when you look at this and you have a tail on top and a tail on the bottom, what it tells you is that there's an equal amount of buyers to sellers. Okay, now if you know how the markets work, you know that after a big move, the small investor gets a lot more bullish. The bigger institutional investors look to probably sell into that rally, which could explain why you get the doji, which is the pause day today. And again, dojis, by the way, versus pause days. A consolidation day would usually be a much smaller candle here. Like imagine if there was just a tiny wick on the bottom or tail on the bottom and a wick on the top, versus this one has a long tail and a long top. That means it's a much bigger battle of ups and downs on that chart, which again is referred to more as a doji pattern. All right, and again, dojis tends to be a little bit more bearish than just a pause day, if you will. Pause days can be neutral, maybe even the beginning of bullish consolidation. Dojis would be looked at as maybe the beginning of bullish consolidation, but it could also be the doji reversal signal of big money selling into small money. All right, in any case, bottom line is let's continue to see where things go. If we look at this chart and see where the next level is, you do have a level just a little bit above this right here around 448. If you get through 448, then there is a chance that we could go all the way up to about 457 to 58 right up here. All right, so these would be your next two resistance points on the intraday spiders. In terms of support, you basically kissed this 440 level today, which was this pivot. So that was your first support. If you break through that, then you likely head down to this area right around 432. Then you have 428 support, and eventually you fill the gap down here at 417 or so. All right, and again, eventually my guess is we break this. This is also a line I'm watching very closely, which is an upsloping pattern here, and we could even make a case that you're starting to maybe build in some sort of wedge pattern here where we could chop inside of this range until eventually breaking to the downside. Okay. One other thing I'm seeing, and again, I'm just seeing this live as I'm doing this video. Obviously, you guys are watching recording, but one of the interesting things I'm seeing here is it looks like a parallel line here. I'd have to actually, you know what, let me use my parallel charting line because that gives me the most accurate read here, but it could signal why the markets are at resistance here. So let me go to parallel channel, and let's basically look at this low here, connected to here, to these lows. And then let's drag it up. Yeah, look at that. So that's so cool, guys. So look at this. And again, this is the fun thing about, I mean, I almost feel like a kid with those drawing books, those books with different games in them, like connect the dots and so forth. But you can see here, you connect these lows, and then look, pivot high here, and look at the high today. So again, it looks like we're trading inside of this pattern now. And by the way, can I just throw this out to you guys? Where else have you seen this pattern? All right, a big move down and then this kind of sideways channel pattern. Well, you don't have to go very far. All you have to go is to go to the Bitcoin chart, and you can see it right there. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, here's your big move down. Now, let me get those same parallel channel lines here, and let's take a look. All right, so let's connect these lows here approximately and bring it up here, right? So if we extend it out right there, you can see. So here's a top, here's your bottoms, and bottoms. And again, look at the chop that you got in there afterwards. So could this be a kind of a precursor of what the market's going to do for the next couple weeks? Maybe. Maybe we just chop sideways with up and down moves inside of this range before eventually, either breaking out or breaking down. Now, I think it's important to recognize that this channel pattern is generally a bearish pattern, right? You have a sharp move down in the charts here, right? And then this is all inside bar, bear flag action. So eventually, you don't know when, but eventually the Bitcoin chart is expected to break down. And again, I do Bitcoin usually later, but what the heck, we'll do it now. So again, that chart pattern is still holding, and eventually you do expect it to break down. Now, if we flip back to the S&P 500, I mean, the same thing would be true. It's just that you're very early on in this. We literally could go, same thing, like down here, down here, down here, down here. I mean, you could just stay in this area for quite some time before finally breaking to the downside. But the one thing that it does kind of make me think is that maybe this is a doji pattern here, and maybe we are going to pull back off of that line. Now, again, that's just the probabilities, right? Probabilities don't mean guarantees. I think that's important for us as investors to understand. Anytime you're using charts, you're doing probabilities, not guarantees. So the probabilities signal some sideways chop before a lower move, But again, does it mean that we can't go up here? That we can't go up here? I mean, we could easily go up here. Nothing that says we can't. There's still a percentage chance that we do. All right. So anyways, just some cool stuff there with how patterns, and this is one of the cool things you're going to find out for those of you that are newer. Some of you guys have been around for a long time, but when it comes to patterns, they tend to repeat over and over again. And again, they could be slightly different. They could be rhymes versus repeats, but in general, the moves are the odds favor the continued move in the direction that that pattern historically has shown, right? All right, so anyways, just something to keep an eye on there. Very cool stuff. If we look at the Qs, look at where the Qs stopped on a dime, right at that trend line there. Definitely interesting to note. And again, if you zoom out, you see that the low from March of 2020, and here's another channel, parallel lines, right? I mean, this is the greatest thing. And in all fairness, I'm finding as I'm trading that parallel channels become more and more important. Or maybe I just didn't know that. I don't think they're becoming more and more important. I think they just always have been. I haven't recognized them as much. But you can clearly see, you connect top, you missed it here, but then you kind of kissed it right there, low to low, and then we broke below it, we retraced there, we broke below it, we retraced there, and again, that's where we're stopping, at least at this point in time. So again, does that now mean we're going to trade back down, eventually maybe taking out this kind of double bottom low on the Qs? We'll have to see, but it certainly is a possibility and a strong possibility at that. So again, you guys know I picked up the QID on Friday. Today we bought some short oil via SCO. I shorted Tesla. I shorted Alcoa. That's what you're going to see. As these markets remain extended, as certain individual stocks get more and more extended, I am going to look to short them. I'll tell you another stock on my radar for a swing short, Mosaic. Look at this chart here, folks. I would say basically the $70 level is what I'm looking at, but look at this extension move. Now, this is a potash ag stock, so it's basically a fertilizer stock, and we know that a lot of the fertilizer comes from Russia and so forth, so it makes a lot of sense that these would get these crazy moves up right now with what's going on in the world going on. All right, but again, doesn't mean it's not a good trading opportunity. You just have to find the right levels, and then like I always say, start small. You know, you don't need to break the bank and go for a home run. Go for a single. Then if you need to, you can add another position, and work your average to the point where you're in a good shape to make good money. All right. Let's quickly go to the Russell today. The Russell did have a little bit of downside today. So the Russell actually was an underperformer. I think that's worth noting because, as we know, the Russell was a leading indicator in telling us the market was going to rally. In fact, if you go back to a couple, just literally 2 weeks ago, I was noticing to you guys and talking to you guys how the Russell was not pulling back to the lows like the S&P or the Qs were. And sure enough, instead, what was it doing? It was making a bullish pattern. Now, just for fun's sake here, just to have some more fun, let's do this real quick. What if we take this line and connect it to this pivot top right there, and then we drop it down, and then basically look at that. Pivot low right there. That's a classic in spirit of bull flag. Then you got the breakout. I'm still in the camp that I think at some point we go to 212. That's the big level. That's where I will short the Russell. But again, I don't know. Maybe we'll pull back first. And by the way, the difference here is you actually broke out on the Russell, right? So if you look at this range, and if we flip back to the spiders chart, the spiders are still in the range, okay? They're still in the range. By the way, the angle is upsloping, but the parallel lines, again, still parallel, just an upsloping channel versus the Russell, which was a downsloping channel. Downsloping channels tend to break out. Upsloping channels tend to break down. If you're wondering why, I could get into a lot of the psychology side of things, but I tend to believe, and this really goes for Bitcoin quite a bit, and I can show you guys this on Bitcoin. So you have this channel here on Bitcoin, right? But look at this. And I know I'm jumping around a lot, guys, but there's just so many cool things to talk about. But take a look at this, right? And just extend that out a little bit right there. There. So here was a downsloping channel, and look, you broke out, right? So this is kind of confirming what the Russell did in terms of pattern formation. All right, this is a really good video for education, by the way. But yeah, inside choppiness, and this broke out. And now the psychological side of it, and this is the kind of the inside scoop of why this happens on a mental level, is that here you were making lower lows. Now, normal people will say, oh, you're making lower lows, that's bearish. Yes, that's exactly right. That's because normal people think that way. The problem is when you have everyone starting to say, oh, I'm getting more bearish because, Bitcoin keeps making lower lows, what ends up happening? Too many people go bearish, and then price ultimately squeezes because there's too many shorts in the trade, and it breaks out. right? Well, the same is true here. You have the parallel area here with higher lows. So people are getting more and more bullish. Oh, Bitcoin's making a higher low. Psychologically, they're getting more bullish. You're kind of grinding sideways to up versus down. So that upside inching is kind of making people more bullish. In essence, you get too many people on the long side. They have to get flushed out. And that's where you likely, and again, I say likely, but again, this is all probabilities, that you break to the downside. So just really cool stuff. But when we go back to this, the Russell, makes sense, right? Here, you were kind of chopping down. There was a lot of fear and panic in the Russell, but obviously it wasn't getting to the lows, which told you smart money, big money was accumulating, but even though it was making a lower low and a lower low here. So then what happens? Price breaks out. Okay, I mean, it's just like that. It's really remarkable. All right. Let me see what else is here. I'm just curious about something. And this is, again, just me seeing something here. I'm just curious. Look at that, almost perfectly parallel. Wow. Yeah, see, I mean, parallel lines are everywhere, folks, everywhere. And again, maybe I even misdrew this one slightly, I don't know. But the bottom line is, I mean, it's almost perfect. Pivot low to pivot low, pivot high to pivot high, and then pivot high to pivot high. Just kind of cool stuff, which, by the way, I would just dare surmise that, and by the way, I'm liking using this word surmise today. I don't really use it very often, but I wonder if the next upside target of this would be the parallel line here, which would match up there, right? So look at this. Where's this parallel line right now? Right here at this pink one too, right at that 212-ish area. And that would be then a parallel move up again. So there's, by the way, I've been doing a lot of research on parallels, and they are really pretty cool. You can find them so many times. You could probably even see more in the chart if we zoomed out and, varying ones. But just, yeah, really cool stuff. All right, anyways, let's get on to a couple other points here. Let's take a look at gold. We've already covered Bitcoin, obviously. Let me flip over to this so I can get the commodity. There we go. So again, gold did have a little bit of a bounce today. It's still chopping here. I still think you're going to get a move down here. My guess, again, who knows when this horrible conflict with Russia invading Ukraine will end, but my guess is at some point, if there's ever a peace deal or if ever something comes out of it that's a positive, then you will see gold have another big flush initially, and then the bottom is in, and then off to the races it goes again. All right, so again, right now, just choppy action. Things in Ukraine haven't gotten any better that I've heard. If anything, a little bit on the worse side. And again, therefore, it's keeping that bid on the underbelly of gold for the time being. But again, the question has to be asked is, are you starting to make a bearish pattern here? Maybe for another leg down, that could be what's starting to happen. If we look at silver real quick here, silver, again, chopping sideways here, same kind of thing. Still expecting a move back to the scene of the crime area here. Pretty much sub $24. Anything below 24 would be very, very interesting to me. All right, and lastly, let's quickly go to oil and see what we got on this one. You can see oil again with a very solid move to the upside. You've now had 3 days to the upside, but again, you are into resistance up here. We did get over the 110 resistance level today, but now you're right into the next one, which is right here at 112 and change. So the 110 level was right in this area here. You can see this little area right there. Now you're up to that one. Doesn't mean we can't go higher. The next level would be right here around 115, as I said to you guys already. But this is the beauty of doing what we do. We buy small. When it goes up to the next one, we add in more. We can add more. We can add more multiple times, working our average up until we get the move that we want. All right, and again, that's what I'm looking to do here. I do personally think that the high is in. So, if you look at the chart here on oil and we zoom out, actually I have to go to the monthly chart here, but if you look at this chart, to me, this is a parallel line that should hold for the time being, right? Major pivot high, pivot lows here. So you should see further downside on this. My guess is ultimately this is where you're heading this year. See this pivot top right around $75. My guess is it's also the midpoint of the channel. That's probably where you're heading, right in that vicinity at some point this year. Again, I don't know when, but at some point I do think that that's likely going to be where we go on oil. And again, it makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, there's so many people were calling when we were at 130 for $200 oil. To me, I never understood that because the amount of demand destruction for oil was just epic at 120, 130, and you're still at 110 or 112. There's still a lot of demand destruction going on, in the economy and global economy. And then you still have the chance that either you get a peace deal with Russia, or you have Venezuelan oil, or Iran, a deal with Iran, or, there's just so many possibilities, especially as we get closer to those midterms, that likely something will come in to take it down. And again, that's why I'm more than happy to pull the trigger on a short on oil again by buying SCO. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day, folks. Thanks as always for being members. Let's keep it rocking and rolling. Take care.